Beep. No.
Dan
Hooton.
That's Dan's last name.
Mrs.
Carter?
Hooton was my
No.
Dan.
I had her for English.
No,
I
it
did.
wasn't.
Was that Art Hooton's
Italian
wife,
boy.
the
Yeah,
sign
grew up
painter?
in the Bronx.
My
in a
God.
little family farm.
Do you
in
know that
North
I
Bronx.
went...
Dan lands a lot of.
Oh, I wasn't here.
Okay.
I
a lot
spotted
of times,
with,
and I guess
with
another
Art
time
Hooton
since you've
on
been
Lake Candlewood.
back.
He was
Wow.
hiking me at 60
I'd like to
miles
meet
an hour.
him.
Nice
Oh,
boat.
yeah.
I was a little kid.
The Mindful Chef?
Yeah,
I'm all about the Mindful
It's a
Chef.
small world.
That's
Yeah.
his gig, and he makes stuff weird, out of discarded stuff.
Okay, we're on.
He makes stuff out of discarded stuff.
Wow.
Hats out of. Are we on?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, wait a second. What happened to the intro song?
I didn't hear the intro song. Well, they caught us mid-con. There's the camera. We're on.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to Progressive Soup. Hello. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. We're continuing our discussion about Bernie Sanders, and I think where we're going to go with this one is we don't get much press in the mainstream media, what's referred to as the mainstream media. But along with our guests, Barry Finch and Henry Pietras, Emily and I co-hosts, we're going to talk about this. I saw on the internet a replay of a Joe Scarborough show in the morning. He's on MSNBC in the morning, and I guess none of us are big fans of Joe Scarborough, but we had to note that on the show he and his friends Mika Brzezinski and the other dudes. They had Bernie Sanders on and spent, I'm going to say, about 15 minutes of the show. And they were very respectful of Bernie and actually talked about issues and actually asked him intelligent questions and gave him time to answer. Later on in the show, they had Bernie's wife, Jane, came on to talk about her part of the campaign and about Bernie and how they met and all the gushy stuff. But
I'd like to. Henry, what brought you to be a supporter of Bernie?
It was the time he announced it in May when he decided to run for president. Mm-hmm. Okay. The first thing I did is I went to the internet and started looking at Bernie Sanders, what his platform was and what people were writing about him, and there was an article in the New York Times trashing him.
Oh.
So, okay, but see,
heaven forbid a liberal,
which is fine,
corporate liberal paper.
Right.
But then, New York Times allows reader comments, and the reader comments are really intelligent.
Right.
And there were over 800 reader comments, and I read them.
Right.
I read them all. Okay, and the one thing that impressed me is that almost without exception, every comment pushed back against the writer.
Huh?
And, when I read that, it was like I was crying. And you can ask my daughter, Stephanie.
Right.
Okay? I was sitting at Three Brothers Diner, and I was crying. Okay? Because it was so positive, and there was so much good feeling about Bernie. People who knew him from Burlington, people who knew what he was about, were just pushing back and calling the journalists out on being irresponsible.
Wow.
Well, the New York Times is socially liberal. That's undeniable. Right. But they are corporate, and like other media outlets that have become all corporate, it's all about the advertising dollars and which candidate's going to have the most money to spend paying us to run their advertisements, paying the media to run their advertisements. The New York Times is very, very corporate, and in that sense, it's just as bad as Fox or any of them, MSNBC, any CBS, ABC, NBC. Did I miss any?
CNN,
yeah. But it's very corporate, and you have to take a lot of this with a grain of salt, because you see during the debates, the Democratic Party debates, where the media outlets were instantaneous with, Hillary Clinton won the debate, she carried the day, she's looks very presidential. It's because they know she's going to have a huge amount of money, and it'll be money that she'll spend on their media outlets to run ads.
David, I'll add to that.
Yeah.
In that, based on the comments, I picked up a lot of little tidbits that are very nice and short and to the point. And one of the things that impressed me, and I collect some of the really impressive comments that people write, and I put it into a Word document, and just keep adding and adding. I've got like hundreds of pages at this point. But the one thing that impressed me is that, and I see it many times, for those places, I challenge the viewers to go to any newspaper article, any article that allows commentary, and rather than read the article, whether it's positive or negative about Bernie, and just read the commentary. I think it will impress you. But the thing that impressed me in some of the comments was, people are making it very clear, and they say, while the media wants us to pick their choice, okay, they're saying it's the media's job to tell us the facts,
Right.
and we'll tell the media who won.
Good point. That's a good point. And
Okay.
oddly enough, while during particularly the Democratic Party debates, while the media was announcing
Right.
before, during, and after
Right.
that Hillary Clinton was the clear winner,
Right.
all of their polling, all of their comments, all the Twitter and all the Facebook remarks that they were picking up were saying something quite the contrary. They were saying that Bernie Sanders really, in fact, was making a lot stronger impression. Now, granted, that's not a scientific poll, because it's volunteered information rather than reaction to hard and strict questions conducted by a poll. But it says a lot when the media is actually contradicting what people are telling them in their opinion as to who did better during a debate event.
And again, I'll add to what you're saying, in the sense that my fun part is after a debate.
Right.
I skip channels. I go from channel to channel to channel, because I know that all the people on there are paid operatives. Okay, they have an agenda.
Yeah.
So then the game is, well, what's the spin? It's trying to figure out, what spin are they pushing? And it's unbelievable how corrupt this system is.
I suspect
it's not about fairness.
I suspect in a lot of those bits and pieces of conversation, you'd have one station pretty much picking up the ball from the one that you watched a second earlier, was pretty much carrying on the predetermined, pre-prescribed remarks about. Did you watch the debates? Thoughts?
Well, like Henry was saying, I listened to the pundits afterwards. And half of the pundits I listened to, whether which side of the fence they are on, seemed not to be watching the same debate that I was. And I'm wondering, how can they come up with this?
Right.
So what's the channel that doesn't have pundits and they just,
C-SPAN.
C-SPAN.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So I decided after that point in time, I was going to watch everything I could on C-SPAN, so I didn't have to listen to all that stuff.
Right. Right.
And
Influenced.
because it was one-sided, it was the other sided, and I really couldn't believe that it was they watched the same debate I did.
Yeah, I'll add to what you're saying. I had the first debate. It was Chris Matthews, and he grabbed Bernie right after the first debate, and he was so complimentary. Bernie, you won the debate, and so on. And then I watched, over time, I watched Chris Matthews through the rest of the night, and he was saying, Hillary won, Hillary won, Hillary won. So it's like, I actually got so angry that I actually fed back to the show, saying that, Chris, it's one or the other, it's not both. It's like, you can't be for here at this one moment,
Right.
and then at another moment be for somebody else.
Right.
So, I kind of called him out on it.
And yeah, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's, pragmatically speaking, we know that the media is going to go to the one that's going to give them the most advertising dollars and spend the money, and that's what they're fishing for. That's what their reporting is geared towards. And of course, on the Republican side, is they're geared toward the one that makes the wild, rantatious, crazy statements. We won't mention any names, Donald Trump, but they gravitate toward him because whenever they can lead a news report off with his name, the likelihood is greater that people will watch because they know that they're in for some good entertainment, if not any intelligent thought or discussion.
Well, again, it's an agenda. You have to look at what the agenda is. Media thrives on controversy, not about accuracy or looking at best practices and proposing something.
They like a dogfight.
Personally, I would like to see, for every pundit that comes on TV, for every problem they mention, 3 solutions.
Yeah.
Okay? Otherwise, go away.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, look for solutions. You can start with a problem, but certainly go from there to look for solutions to correct that problem. Yeah, that's what life is all about. It's not griping and belly aching about things you aren't happy about. It's finding
solutions.
Solutions, reasonable solutions that make sense to the majority of people. But I guess if you do that on television or on radio or whatever, people will say, well, problem solved. I can go on to another show. I can watch America's Most Wanted home videos or America's whatever. Or Dancing with the Home Videos. What's the one?
Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll go to one of those crazy shows and get mindless pablum thrown at them.
I know in the past there had been debates on radio and television. Like they said the JFK and Nixon debates.
Yes.
That people who listened to the debates said Nixon won, but then when they saw them on TV, JFK was better looking, and they would say he would win. I wonder if debates are on the radio anymore. I mean, I wonder if that influences now who's more attractive.
That's a good point, and certainly that's a classic example that you mentioned about Nixon and Kennedy. How people who listened to the debates generally thought that Nixon won the debates, and people that watched on TV and saw Nixon who was under the weather, he was sweating, he looked uncomfortable, and JFK looked more in control of the discussion and what he was saying, that visual carried the day for Kennedy on television. Interesting, yeah. I don't know if anything's on radio anymore.
Well, if you listen to how the debates are being described, okay, I mean, the one word that you hear all the time is performance.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's like, what about content?
Right.
It's like, what about issues?
Right, exactly.
They want the fluff rather than the substance underneath.
So you can study up for performance, but can you study up for really understanding the issues?
Right,
I mean, Sarah Palin had one pager that she had to memorize because she didn't understand anything about foreign policy.
Right.
Okay? That's the bottom line. Yeah. And yet her advisor is one of the biggest pundits on MSNBC.
Right.
Okay, the person who recommended her.
Yeah.
So, at some point I think that, people who have, had their chance and screwed up, I think that really their credibility is, down the toilet, and maybe they shouldn't be listened to. All right? I mean, if you continue to repeat the same thing over and over when we know it doesn't work. Okay, maybe it's time to go away or get a new tune.
And the questions that were asked during the debates, which are designed to get a row out of the candidates and get a little dog fighter, cat fighter, dog versus cat fighter, whatever. They asked Bernie about the emails from the Benghazi, from the 40 or 50 or 100 Republican investigations into Benghazi, all of which conclude that there's nothing there, that there was no stand-down order. Even though
there were 8. There were 8 investigations.
Even though there's a movie out now, which is still, they say they're taking both sides of the issue, but one side is a lie. The idea that there was a stand-down order given. but it's still finding its way into the media. But of course, they asked Bernie, about the emails, and his classic line, which put the whole thing to rest. I'm sick and tired of hearing about the damn emails. And that was the end of it.
Put his arm around Hillary.
Because Hillary did the emails too.
Yeah. So
the reality is that it doesn't get her off the hook.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. It just says that's not the issue we need to discuss.
Right.
It's not important enough for the nation.
Our time.
Let the authorities, the FBI and so on, take care of it. They'll get to it in time.
Yep.
Obviously, you're going to need to adjust for political reasons. So there's going to be stalling and all kinds of politicking to make sure that it doesn't hit at the wrong moment. But in time, it will come out, and things will go forward. But Bernie is one of the few people I know that really sticks to the to the issues.
Right.
Everything is about issues. I mean, even on the first debate, he didn't even introduce himself. I have a family and I have a wife and all. He didn't do that. He just went in and boom, issues.
What matters more to the American people rather than the fluff. Now, you mentioned during our first show about critical thinking, and I think we spent some time talking about that. And a lot of people, unfortunately, will start with a preconceived conclusion. And these are people that are not critical thinkers. They're not people that are looking for the truth. They're people that have decided what the truth is and then look backwards to try to find tidbits or factoids.
That's how we got the Iraq War, by the way.
Yeah. Things that match the conclusion they've already come to. Oh yeah, the Iraq War, and we're thankfully
destruction.
That was one of George W. Bush's I guess his oops moments. One of his oops moments was, sorry we got it wrong, but they were so certain at the time that in fact all the intelligence that was brought to them said quite the opposite. That stuff's so old, and it's chemical and biological weapons that actually America gave to Saddam Hussein in order to fight against the Iranians.
Right.
When Saddam was on our side against the ones that weren't on our side, that stuff was so old and so degraded that there was no way in the world that it could be used at that point.
Yeah.
Just wild stuff. But the notion about critical thinking, that's what we need to draw out from ourselves and to honestly look for the truth. We want to talk a little bit more about healthcare. We spent a little time on that in the first show.
Yeah.
Emily noted that in Italy, where she has dual citizenship, and she spent years living in Italy, and that the Italians have a much different healthcare system than we have.
Education
system, and things are different over there. And in terms of healthcare, it's much less expensive on a per capita basis than in America.
As far as the healthcare, from the viewpoint of GNP, we spent 18%. That's a huge amount. That's a Romney number, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas the next nation in the world spends about 12% of the GNP or under.
Yeah.
Okay, Germany is about 11.9, France is around 11.8, and the United States is the only country that has the model that we have. There's no other nation that has the model, which is basically a model for profit, healthcare for profit.
Right.
And by the way, it shouldn't be health. We call it health insurance, but in reality, it should be health care. And there's a huge distinction because the agendas are different.
Right.
Health insurance is for profit.
Yeah.
And as soon as you put profit in, it's not about the patient anymore.
Right.
As evidenced by a simple test.
Right.
Call any doctor and say, for an appointment.
Right.
Okay? What's the first question they're going to ask you?
What's your insurance company?
Do you have insurance?
Yeah.
Right? Is that the first question?
Because they want to get paid and they want to know who they're going to be dealing with at the other end of the telephone.
Okay, but from the viewpoint of the patient, is that the first question?
No, that should be the last question to ask rather than the first.
Okay, and even though we spend, let's say 50%, if I take 18 over 12, that's 50% more for health care. Okay, we still have, roughly 30 million people uninsured. Yeah. Okay, and the outcomes are not 50% better than anyone else.
you would think a doctor takes a Hippocratic oath, that they should take care of everybody. Shouldn't be whether you have insurance or not. The patient should be first.
It's the way it used to be before we had
Right.
HMOs.
I even, as I said before, I even experienced that at Danbury Hospital.
Right.
Okay?
You mentioned you
Just
took your mom
recently.
there,
I figured that the ACA or Obamacare
Right.
would help because the title is Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Okay, so the patient is at the focus,
Right.
and yet I didn't feel like the patient was being taken care of in our last visit at Danbury Hospital. Okay?
And I know when the Affordable Care Act went into play, the insurance I had, the premiums increased, like doubled, So I'm like, oh, I did have affordable health care, but then when the Affordable Care Act went in, then it became not affordable. I thought, this doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's, the health care has been going up in cost, and you alluded to the fact that that we're paying significantly more
Right.
than any other country in the world. And yet we have had at the time 30 million. Actually, it was more than 30 million at
Uninsured.
the time. Now we're down to about 30 million. But,
Right.
but we have a lot more people insured. But at the same time, the quality, our infant mortality rate for those of us that care about infants, infant mortality rate is much higher in the United States. Quality
it's
of care,
not consistent
longevity,
with what we pay.
longevity
Exactly.
is shorter in America.
Right.
Yeah, our nation is not getting value for our money.
No, not at all.
Now, I feel bad for your dad, who's a doctor,
Right.
because as a doctor, I know he cares.
Right.
I knew him years ago, but the one thing that he's being forced to being is a businessman.
Right.
Okay, and I don't think doctors need to be businessmen.
No.
I mean, up to a point, yes, but not looking at it from having to hire business practice managers.
Right.
and,
Exactly.
and actually becoming trying to see how they can increase their billables and so on.
Right.
That's not their business,
No.
and they certainly shouldn't be doing data entry
Right.
like the nurse. Okay,
Right.
a paid nurse doing data entry.
Right.
Okay, that's not their job.
No.
Their job is to provide health care.
Right. Exactly.
And I see it. I'm a business analyst. Okay, so I look at process and I see where the breakdowns are.
Right.
And I don't see, when I walk into Danbury Hospital over the years, I don't see much of an improvement. There is one improvement in Danbury Hospital, in that they implemented triage, which is a wonderful idea. Because as soon as you walk in, you check in, and then you get to see a nurse where they make an assessment.
Okay.
Okay, years ago it used to be where you just, take a seat and wait.
Right.
Okay.
With no idea about how
Now-
quickly they should see you.
Yeah.
Ah.
So that's a huge improvement. Also, they had a little walk-in clinic on the side where you could go in and get your non-trivial cases taken care of without being admitted or moved into the emergency room. So those are improvements.
And likewise, we've had all the immediate medical care places that have sprung up, and that's
Urgent care.
Urgent care. It's a
Right.
good idea because
Yeah.
a lot of things are handled much more efficiently there, and a lot less expensive than the emergency
Well,
room.
I'll give you an example. My daughter had a possible strep throat, and it was on a weekend. It was Easter, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
And I told her, there's nothing open. Go to the emergency room. Well, the bill was $1,300. Okay, for a test to see whether or not she had strep throat.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
which turned out to be negative. Okay, but now my insurance pays $800 of it. I'm stuck for $500. A regular doctor visit would be, let's say, $200 or so, assuming that it's weekend and emergency room. $500. That's a reasonable. That's a reasonable
Right.
charge. $1,300. Not reasonable.
No.
That's a very good indicator of why we pay so much more collectively as Americans for our health care and have poorer outcomes. And it didn't used to be that way before HMOs came along.
Yeah, I think in Italy you pay higher taxes, but all these things are taken care of. If you feel you have a sore throat, you go to the hospital or there's clinics and you go in. And friends that I have feel they actually pay for it, so they want to use those services. Whereas here, you feel if you get these social services, you feel people say, oh, people like you are taking advantage of the system. But there, it's almost here, it's seen of as a negative thing. But there, people think, I pay for this, so I have I want to use these services because I'm paying for it. So it's interesting. It's all perception and attitude, and
Well,
same thing.
There is a good thing about the ACA, and in the long run, we'll improve it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, assuming that the president gets a Congress that will work with him.
Right.
Okay, but to come in and say repeal and replace, first
Right.
of all, repeal is for the 67th time just a few days ago.
Yeah.
Okay, and replace, the question mark is with what?
And they
We
don't-
still don't have
And they
an
never have
answer.
anything to
Right.
replace
And
with.
we've been doing now the discussion on healthcare now for pretty close to 30 years.
Right. I know.
Okay, and there is no answer to. So
No.
what if we take what we currently have
Right.
and try to improve it?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, and by the way, we did have there was a healthcare model like ours in
Right.
Switzerland
Right.
in the 90s. Okay, but Switzerland decided to remove the healthcare model, or
Right.
to go with what the rest of the European countries have, and remove the for-profit
Right.
setup because they said it was a conflict of interest.
Right.
And think about it.
Right.
If the first question when you call is, "Do you have insurance?" that's absolutely the wrong question.
Right. Yes.
I think Bernie would change things like that.
Yeah.
Well, he's talking,
It's
single payer.
discrimination.
He's talking single payer. It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's just like Social Security. Okay, you pay into it when you work. You pay into health care as you work.
Barry, will you take us out again? We've got a couple of minutes.
It's almost
so?
discrimination.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can do that.
No, in a way, it's
Barry
almost
Finch, our good
discriminatory.
friend, is a balladeer, troubadour, songwriter.
education, too.
And
Bottle.
Education shouldn't be so
My daughter lives in
expensive.
England, and when you get a cold, you talk to the
You talk to who?
pharmacist.
Oh, right, exactly.
prescribe.
Yeah, it's true.
Bernie is our man. As one of us, he knows we can take back our democracy from that evil oligarchy. For America, Bernie has a plan. Fight for a fair economy. Get big money out of politics. Reverse climate change. Equality and dignity for all. Yeah, Bernie, our man, has a plan. As they say in Second City Comedy Improvisation. Bernie's plan works for every child, woman, and man in this land. Let's have good harmonies now. This land is your land.
This land is my land. From California to the New York Island.
From the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters.
This land was made for you and me.
oh yes, it was. Thank you for
Thank
watching.
you.
And we're going to continue our discussion as we fade.
Yes.
So we're going on January 23rd. We have the event at all over the country.
Yeah, we
but
never got to
locally,
say that.
Locally, we're still on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Brookfield Library to watch a speech by Bernie and
Yeah.
hear a little bit more about.
Bernie requested that just yesterday, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of events coming on for that date.
Oh,
Okay.
February 23rd?
Yes, that's
January 23rd.
January 23rd.
5:30.
Brookfield Library, 5:30, January 23rd.
Yeah,
Oh.
and then there's a debate watch on the 17th in Black Angus.